Everyone. Give me a few moments to just share this post.
Hi.
Let me see. Okay. Shared a couple groups. So how was your day today? So, talk while I'm doing this real quick.
My day was good. I am a little bit tired though, how I can be.
Yeah.
So I'm a little low energy, but it doesn't mean that I don't have something great to share. And I'm thankful for you for being accommodating.
Well, you know what? I'm so excited to have this opportunity to do this. I really admire your work. So since we are already talking, I'm just really trying to share this video. Go ahead and share the video for me, please. Thank you. We appreciate you joining tonight. Hi, Brian. Hi, Alfredo. Hi, Tony. Hi, Zhang. I am Shira Phillips, and I am joined tonight with Ayanna Fiyah. Some people call her Mama Fiyah. She is a LPC, and that stands for Licensed
Professional
counselor, licensed professional counselor.
Yes.
And hi Miles, hi Tracy. I just feel really honored and really privileged to have this conversation with this beautiful woman tonight. She does amazing work. Not only her, but her and her husband, her entire family. And just a little bit about her. She specializes in sexual abuse in young women or women?
Yes, I specialize in mental health support and therapy for people who have survived sexual abuse, especially women and children. And so we will see men and boys who have experienced that trauma as well. The children, especially, I see boys all the time. Brother Shaq kind of coaches Black men and boys.
All right. Can you guys confirm for me real quick? Can you hear us pretty good? Just let us know that you can hear us. Hi, Bryce. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us, Adarian. And so I'm curious to know, what made you go into counseling in the first place? And not only that, but what made you want to specialize in sexual abuse or sexual trauma?
So the reason why I went to counseling is because, the reason why I went into counseling is because counseling helped me save my life. Counseling helped me tremendously once I was ready. And so my parents had such a tumultuous childhood. My parents kept trying to put me in counseling and put me with a therapist. And it just never worked because I wasn't ready. I really didn't understand my issue. I didn't really, know that my experience, being a survivor of sexual abuse would take me in so many different crazy places and doing so many different things that finally led me to suicidal thoughts and a suicidal plan. And then when that happened, I got scared and worried that something was really, really wrong. And so I started going to counseling. And that's when I realized, wow, this really works. It really helps to get things out of your heart and mind and lay it out to really look at pathology and patterns and these kind of things. And so that's when the inception started. But 10 years later, of course, you have to go to school for that kind of thing. You can't just say, I want to be a counselor. I think you can, but you can't license and professionally. You can't do that. And so I'd already gone to school for psychology. And so I just went back to get my master's degree in counseling, and then it took about 4 more years to get a license. To get a license is pretty serious. You're directly under a doctor or someone who has a PhD. You're directly under that person and do a lot of the one-on-one work. Yeah. So I'm a survivor of sexual assault, and so that's why I decided to really, really hone in on those survivors, to help those survivors mentally, because I can also share from my space that there is victory in it, that there is triumph in so much pain. There's power in it. And so I often lead people in understanding that there is a beautiful end result if you stick with it and stick with the healing.
Wow.
Yeah.
How common would you say like sexual trauma or sexual assault would be in our community?
I'd say it's so common. I look at it as an epidemic, and I look at it as rampant. And of course, that's not the statistics, but they say 1 in 3 women, women and girls, are sexually violated in some way before the age of 18, which is a pretty big number, but those are reported cases. And so many people, I mean, my cases were never reported. And so there are many cases who are never reported. It stays in families and it's hush hush, and many survivors don't tell. And if they do, they're not believed, and things are swept up under the rug. And so there's many reasons why we don't have a good number or percentage of people. But I know that it's rampant just from the stories that I hear. And, I'm really on a mission to talk about this taboo subject that no one wants to talk about.
Right.
And it's just this new R. Kelly thing where everybody kind of wants to talk about it now, which is great. I don't think it's great that it's happening, but it's great that we're talking about it.
I agree. I agree that I saw somebody online say why everybody's looking at R. Kelly, they need to be looking
right in their family,
right at home,
sometimes right in the mirror. And I really want people to acknowledge that it either happened to them, because a lot of the time it's been so pushed down deeply that they'll be like, oh, that was the past, or it was just this, or it was just that. But people don't realize the impact of the trauma, especially if it happens in the childhood years, the formative years. And so they stuff it down, and they wonder why they emotionally eat, or they wonder why they drink to excess, or shop to excess, or gamble to excess, or and then it starts inhibiting your functioning eventually. And they're like, what's wrong with me? And then we go back and realize that they really are survivors, that they really had this trauma, and to go back and kind of grieve over it, cry and process it, and then forgive. There's unforgiveness, especially the real forgiveness is for yourself. And then there's a forgiveness that we have to do for ourselves as survivors, that it wasn't our fault, we didn't deserve it, and it was wrong. And we are kind of like a dust your shoulders off kind of society, that we really don't sit with our sadness or sit with our grief. And then for people who sit in it, and that's all there is the grief and sadness. There's a lot of different ways to heal this thing. You just got to look at it, though. You have to look at it.
Okay, so those of you who just joined us, we're talking about sexual assault, sexual abuse. Tracy says, and it resurfaces in other areas of your life.
Yes, it does.
Can you tell us what type of impacts this can have on someone?
So many impacts. I would say for sure on self-esteem. That's number one. It's like you feel like you're bad. You feel like you're a bad person. You feel like you deserved it in some way. I think it really matters when the assault happens, even though the impact is just as bad. When you're in those formative years, between 0 and 7, or even 7 and 14, between 0 and 14, and sexual assault happens to you, molestation or rape or anything like that happens, you are absorbing that, get him, y'all. You are absorbing and internalizing the idea of sex, or the idea of feeling bad or feeling guilt or shame. So when it happens at that time in your life, the trajectory for you to be totally out of control sexually, like you promiscuous, or you could even become sexually deviant without getting any help. And so a lot of the time, during this R. Kelly thing, people were talking about R. Kelly also being a survivor, and also a perpetrator. And it's like, what do you do with that? He did not get the help that he needed, and it made a huge amount of impact because he didn't, and that's what it does. Sexual abuse just hurts people. I mean, it's just like my stepmom is also a survivor, and she helped me a lot. When she saw that I was acting out sexually, she was like, what's wrong? She was like, something is wrong with you. And I told her, she was the first person I told. One thing I didn't like is that she made me tell other people. And really, I never make anybody tell. I may encourage them to say, is there someone you trust? Someone, anyone, and make sure they're safe. But she was really adamant about me telling my dad. And then that blew up into a big family thing. And I didn't even share all of what I had gone through. I just shared a little bit, and it just blew up into this big family thing. But the way she describes it is that it's a spirit, like a spirit that touches one person, then that person touches another person, and that person, and it just grows into this thing. Of course, I don't come from that, standpoint, but I like the way that she describes it, like it just spreads. Mm-hmm. It spreads like wildfire, and it, I've hurt people, and even though I didn't sexually hurt anybody, through the damage that it caused in my self-esteem, the way I viewed sex, the way I viewed myself, like completely powerless, purposeless, except for being a sexual object. I mean, I broke plenty of hearts. I lied, I cheated, abortions. I mean, a lot of ways that I hurt myself and other people throughout this thing. And so it's a trip to think that R. Kelly could also be a victim, but also victimizing people. That's what he does.
Wow. And you say sexual deviant, because a lot of people I've seen online say that, he's a dominant, he's a sexual deviant, that,
But how do you get that way?
Yeah.
How do sexual deviants get sexually deviant? And a lot of the times it's because they've been hurt and damaged by sexual violation, sexual abuse, molestation, and never got any help for it. Never got any help for it.
As I was looking, I saw that it said anywhere between 40 to 80% of offenders of sexual abuse were victims of sexual abuse.
Yeah. I mean, 80%, I would say, was more like it. And really, this thing is so rampant. Like sometimes, can we get him and take him like into the room? Somebody go into the room with him. I think things happen between the ages of 0 and 7. That's why I wanted to talk to you about adverse childhood experiences, because it's real easy to stuff those things down. How many of us remember every little part of our childhood? I know I remember running around with a diaper on, and that was it. And then I remember kindergarten, so that's a big gap. Mm-hmm. And then I remember from kindergarten on, pretty much I can remember my first grade teacher and this, that, and the other. And so things happen before children can't even remember. And then it's such a traumatic thing that we want to forget. We want to push it down and say, I'm fine. And it's a secret. It's like a nasty little secret. And, people just, this part is so important that we find out when it happened and how it happened. Because without doing that, we'll go through this life, maybe, sexually perverted, and we don't even know why. We're touching people, we're making people touch us, and you don't even know why. And when you get down to it and say, do you remember any hurt or pain during childhood? Do you remember, being sad during childhood? And then you start uncovering it and you say, yeah, my mom's boyfriend, and it's not always the case. It's not always the mom's boyfriend. It could be an uncle, or it could be an older sibling. It could be an older cousin. It could be, and please, let's not believe that only men perpetrate.
Right.
Women perpetrate too. And so it's time for us to understand that these things happen and we push it down to believe it didn't. And we got to wonder, there's going to be a time where you hit bottom. That's what happened to me. I hit bottom. I was 28 years old, and I had spent 10 yeyears. I was 18 years old when I told somebody, and I had spent 10 years in denial of the impact.
The impact?
The impact.
Oh, the impact. Okay.
So I told somebody at 18, and then from 18 to 28, I was in complete and total denial of how it impacted me. And so I did all kind of things, And then starting from when it happened to me around 6 years old. And so that was between the 0 and 7. And so I absorbed it and I internalized sex as something that I just did, or I was like a tool almost. And it took me, I started at about 28 years old when I started getting help. And it took me about 3 or 4 years before I was like, I'm turning this around. I can't keep doing what I've always done. And I feel really free now from it. You know, even though I have some PTSD, I can't lie. I do. I still am impacted. But I just take really great care of myself, and I use all my tools and stuff to stay balanced and stay well. And I think you gotta face it first. You gotta accept that it happened, and also accept its impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions for Mama Fiyah, please go ahead and put those out there. Wow, that's a lot. You know, I actually had a few questions, but they kind of left for a second. But do you find that in your work that people forget or repress or don't remember what has happened to them?
Yeah, not remembering is hard, right? Because it's like you don't want to push something on somebody that isn't there. Mm-hmm. If it's been repressed and you really don't remember it, and I ask, have you ever been sexually assaulted, sexually violated, molested? Had that ever happened to you even as a child? They'll be like, no, I don't think so.
I don't inappropriate touching.
Inappropriate touching, molestation, I cover the whole gamut. And they'll say, no, I don't think so. I don't remember. I'm not pushing and I'm not digging. I'm not saying, well, are you sure? Because that's not the type of counseling that I do. They got some people that'll say you repress the memory and try to put you under hypnosis and all this type of stuff. No, but for people who kind of push it off and minimize it, they say, yeah, my older cousin used to force me to have oral sex with him for about 5 years of my life. I'll say, okay. So how did that impact you? And I'm like, oh, no big deal, no big deal. And then I say, well, how's your sex life now? How's sex? Oh, I hate sex. Oh, God. When my boyfriend wants to have sex with me, I'm just like, oh. And I said, sex is a beautiful thing. That's an impact. Or you can say like, or the opposite. Somebody says, oh, it wasn't anything. Somebody tried to rape me when I was a little girl, and my mama caught him and we stopped. And so I said, well, I'm glad that came out right. How were you sexually? Like, how were you? And they'll be like, oh, I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm pretty much a whore. I just go out and I have sex with everyone. And there's a way that it impacts you every single time. And if it's not sexually, it's self-harm is what I see.
Wow.
I see serious self-harm, and it's like, oh, I'm all the time partying, and I can't really stop, but I'm trying to stop drinking, but I can't. And they don't make the connection and say, this is an impact of what you've been through. You're trying to fill a hole somewhere.
So, I mean, while you're trying to fill a hole, I know a lot of us are looking for things to help us feel whole and happy and all those things.
Yeah.
We are going to get to some tools that we can use to heal, or to whatever you would call it.
Yeah,
but before we get there, I want to say this might be a little, I don't know, touchy. I saw a documentary. Not only did I see a documentary, but I've talked to different people where, it was of someone close in their family, like a father, and it was repetitive over long periods of time, to the point where it became a normal thing, or it actually seemed to develop into like a relationship. Like, is that, what do you think? I don't know.
Ooh, there's serious impacts to that. I've seen that, and it's really, really sad to see, because the victim, they have what you call Stockholm Syndrome. It's like, looking at the perpetrator, the person who has hurt them, and said they love them and they wouldn't be anything without them. It's really a mental job that's done on those people, and they don't even realize that this has been harmful or hurtful. And I never did watch the R. Kelly documentary. Just the stuff on Facebook was enough for me. That was still, it was too much for me. So I did my self-care and didn't even go there and try to watch it. But I think it sounds like what's going on. I mean, from what I heard with the R. Kelly thing, it could have also been Stockholm Syndrome. Like, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I've seen it before. I don't have any present people that I see that are like that. The people that I see, about 85% of them have been sexually abused. And they come in, I think, for depression mainly. They come in and say, I'm just so sad. And, you know, I tried everything and I don't know where my joy is. And then, you know, we'll talk about that, but then we'll go back into their own personal history. And sexual abuse is there. Sexual trauma is there in some way. And then we'll stay there, we'll process it. And then, so a lot of the time it's me saying that, you know, that really impacted you in these ways. And they'll be like, no, it really didn't. And so there's a dissonance that people do just to stay sane, you know, to stay sane. Like, really, a family member hurt me and it's hurting me all this time. I can't believe that. You know, I can't really, I won't believe that, you know. And so a lot of time it's convincing the impact, you know, and and sometimes the impacts are relationships we're in, you know. There's a definite corroboration. No, there's a definite link between sexual abuse and physical abuse. So I get a lot of sisters who come in and they are in a domestic violence relationship or a really bad abusive relationship. And then we find out there's sexual abuse there and they've never gotten help or support with the sexual abuse. That also happened to me. I wound up in a domestic violence relationship at like 21 years old. And it took me a long time to recognize what it was. But when it was, I was like, oh, I was scared, you know, still didn't get any help or support. No one was like, you know, no one asked me, am I seeing someone or did I want to see someone? And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom. It takes, like, that wasn't bottom for me to be in a domestic violence relationship. It wasn't bottom for me to be a mama of three, a single mama of three for three different men. That wasn't bottom, you know. Like, you hit that bottom, then you like, ooh, literally there's nowhere to go but up, you know. So
and Stockholm Syndrome, I think, for people who may not exactly know what it is, I describe it as like an unhealthy attachment to your abuser. How would you?
Any attachment, yeah. I mean, I would say that the perpetrator, the victim, looks at the perpetrator as doing no wrong, or sometimes even in a light of, you're my savior, you're my hero, and they're actually the person that hurt them.
Right.
So it's a mental issue.
Yeah, and so for a lot of people who were very critical or overly critical of the women who have come out after so long to talk about R. Kelly or other instances of sexual abuse that they have endured, it could be because of the very same thing we just mentioned, which is Stockholm Syndrome, right?
Right.
So let's go ahead and get into some ways that people can explore their healing, their self-healing. Yeah. And actually, I actually want to ask you this, because I actually have a student also who comes to me and shows me self-inflicted wounds that she and I don't know what I can say or do, or what can we do to help relieve some of this hurt and this pain without hurting ourselves like this.
Definitely. I mean, first and foremost, I would refer anybody that we think might be harming themselves or may have experienced any trauma to a professional.
Yeah, she has a counselor.
Good,
yeah.
Good. Do you have a relationship with a counselor
at
all?
I don't.
Okay. Because sometimes, you know, it takes somebody outside of the counselor, because, you know, depending, does she trust the counselor? Is it a good fit? All these different things. And so you could be, you know, someone says, are you writing? You know, do you have a journal? Put your thoughts into a journal, write them out and express. You know, self-expression could look many ways. For me, writing was like a Band-Aid. You know, I mean, it helps. Band-Aids help. You know,
yeah.
I would have bled out Had I not had a Band-Aid, it didn't heal me though, but it kept me together before I would have fell apart many years ago. I could have potentially even been suicidal, like really killed myself. I really feel like had I not gotten any help, I wouldn't be here today. I would have either wilded completely out and maybe, contracted HIV, maybe gotten into a abusive relationship with someone and been killed or whatever. So journaling really helped. And I think as a teacher, you could support her in that way. If she really, really trusts you, you could ask her, have you ever been through any trauma? And she might say, well, what is trauma? You could say, trauma is it's a crazy thing that happens and you feel completely out of control and you feel like you can't do anything about it, but it hurts really bad. And some traumas can be, depending on her age, I just gave a real simple, I wasn't sure how old she was, really simple kind of thing you could tell a child. Sometimes sexual abuse is trauma. Watching people die or get hurt is trauma. Witnessing domestic violence. Has anything ever happened to you like that? And if she discloses, y'all need to stop everything and walk to the school counselor and have the school counselor deal with that. Because we take for granted what people know. A lot of times people really just don't know that this was harmful to them, especially if it's your uncle or if it's someone in the household. We feel bad about it. We feel guilty and shameful about it, but it is what it is. It's my uncle. I don't want him to get in trouble. It's my brother. I don't want him to get in trouble. And we take it in, and then we start cutting ourselves because we can't, understand, the hurt and pain that's inside. We don't make the connection. And so outsiders, people, teachers, nurses, doctors, counselors, they are the connector. They're the ones to say, something's really wrong. If you're hurting yourself, and of course, bringing up self-love, like we have to love every part of ourselves. And we have to love our bodies. We have to love the things that we say to ourselves, like when you're harming yourself, what are you saying? Are you saying that you're a bad person? Like really self-talk, identifying yourself. I know you're not a counselor at all, but if you really want to help, first and foremost is making sure she has support. Mm-hmm. And then if she does disclose something to you, going to the school counselor about it immediately. And I would go to the school counselor anyway and put her on the school counselor's radar because school counselors have hundreds of children. They have to take, I was a school counselor for a while. You have to help hundreds of children and their families. But it could maybe if she has a counselor, the counselor's like, oh, school counselor might be like, oh, she got a counselor, she all right, but may not know the depth of what she's going through, may not know she's harming herself. And it's scary. That's just like one wall or one step away from suicidal thoughts. It's not suicidal. They harm themselves to relieve pain, but it's just one deeper cut from potentially hurting and killing themselves. So this is serious. Yeah. Most likely she's been through some type of trauma. What I've seen.
Yeah. So for the ones at home, you suggest getting a journal, writing in a journal.
Definitely. Everyone should have a journal. Every Black person on this planet, so-called Black person, you've been through enough trauma. Traumatized is period. Being, in this particular political situation in America, we need a place to put that. Mm-hmm. That's that oppression, the poverty, the oppression, depression, which I call it, that's enough to make anybody just, throw it off, or what we call throw it off, which is unbalanced, and so expressing those feelings, because a lot of times we don't have anybody to talk to. People are like, oh, we don't want to talk about that, or keep your head up, everything will be all right, or, we have a way of not dealing with stuff. And so to your journal, if you keep it sacred, is a place you can put any thoughts. You know, as long as you have it and ain't nobody gonna read it, and ain't nobody gonna touch it, you can put all kind of feelings, all of your feelings in it. And no, it doesn't serve as a counselor like a counselor would, because a counselor is going to reflect back and be your accountability partner and actually look at your history and help you look at your history. But you can still write your history down. Like you can go all the way back to say, did I experience any trauma as a child? And this is not about like making trauma up. If you haven't experienced any personal trauma in your life, celebrate. For people who haven't been sexually abused, celebrate that part of your life. Be thankful that it never touched you. You know, it doesn't mean that it isn't around you in certain ways. It just, it's not, you know, that's not your thing. It didn't happen to you. But remember also, it has happened to a lot of people around you. And so there's this meme that goes around and say, be kind. You never know what people have been through. And that's very true. You never know. You can't look at a person and say, oh yeah, they've been sexually abused. You know, it's so rampant that the only way you can know is having a very personal relationship with someone. And so, so yes, journaling is like easy. Go get you a $1 composition notebook and get it in. Keep it sacred. Keep it not secret, but keep it personal and private so that you can write those down. And any counselor is going to tell you to keep it, everybody to keep a journal, because it's like the top-notch thing that you can start right now. I think what has helped me tremendously, of course, going to counseling, going to therapy, seeking therapy, but beyond that has been a breathing practice. When you've been through a trauma, there's PTSD-like symptoms, and what could be a part of that is like deep depression, but also anxiety. Anxiety, like what we call in New Orleans, your nerves bad. You know, how many people have told us their nerves is bad? And you know that is it's a bell ringer for me to ask questions about anxiety. Anxiety is when is thoughts can overtake your mind, and the same thoughts and over and over and over and over, and that impacts your sleep, that impacts how you're eating, that impacts definitely how you're functioning. You know, you're not able to concentrate, you're not able to focus. And so to me, breathing and meditation has helped a whole lot as far as staying balanced. Like a deep diaphragmatic breath, like the deep ones that help release some things that, you know, oxygen is a beautiful thing for the brain, a beautiful thing, and it's free. It's so free, you know. It's right there for us. We breathe every day, but we breathe very shallowly. As a people, we breathe just to get by. You know what I'm saying? We don't breathe for mental health. We don't breathe for relaxation. You know, what I found is Black people especially, it's really hard to relax. And so we smoke cigarettes and we have sex and we drink wine and we do all these things to try to relax, when relaxation is right there in our breath. The ability to relax is right there in our breath. So for those who are struggling, definitely seek out therapy. For those who are struggling, definitely write in your journal, but start a meditation breathing practice. And it doesn't have to look like yoga, and it doesn't have to look like, you know, you got to pay somebody to do it. There are different apps. There are different YouTube videos that you can get to show you how to deeply breathe. And the thing about it is, do it. You have to do it. You can't just be like, I remember I can breathe, and breathe maybe once. You use it all day. I use it all day, Queen, because sometimes I'm sitting with someone in therapy, and the story is just so heavy, and I'll just stop it right there, and I'll be like, you know what? Let's just breathe. Let's just breathe, because I need it. Because I'm like, I start feeling like, and so I breathe, because, I can feel it in my shoulders. I can, I'll be all tense. Yeah, so by the time I'm finished breathing, my shoulders are relaxed, and I'm ready to get back in. But it's also teaching how the diaphragmatic breath can, help in those moments and those trigger moments. I think Tracy asked about triggers. to really support. We can teach to children. It's important for children to know, that their breath is just right there for them.
Right. And so someone said my anxiety, Deandra said my anxiety is horrible.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I don't think I know there were times I experienced anxiety and I did not know that is what it was. So like anxiety would be racing thoughts. It would be like trembling. It would be like heart needing to pace. Yeah. Heart beating fast. That's like.
Yeah. And I think the telltale sign is that it's these thoughts over and over and over and over where you feel like you can't rest. There's no time to rest because it just loops in a wicked loop in your head, and it also causes
panic attacks.
Anxiety can be without panic attacks. People can have anxiety without it, but another sign is panic attacks, and they can be debilitating.
Yeah.
And what I would tell Deandra is, let's stop calling anxiety my anxiety, because she said, yes, my anxiety is horrible. Call it the anxiety. Because if you call it mine, it's possessive, like I'm choosing to have anxiety. And we know that's not the case. So I think one of the first steps is making that, deliberate disconnection in the brain to say the anxiety. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's really, really important. That's just for Deandra right now. Yeah. I'm not saying that that's going to stop it, but what it does in our minds is it shifts, and instead of saying that I'm owning this, I'm taking it with me. We're saying you're over there, and sometimes you mess with me, and I'm going to choose to breathe. Deandra, I would just say, Queen, get onto YouTube and try to find a breathing technique video to relax deeply diaphragmatically.
It definitely helps a lot. I know. I sometimes do it multiple times a day.
Yes, multiple. Really definitely in the morning when you're first waking up. Definitely before you're going to bed at night. I breathe myself to sleep. And when I breathe myself to sleep, I have dreams. Like I'm dreaming. I'm in deep rest. When I wake up, I feel great. I do some deep breaths. I do deep breaths all day, every day. And what is it doing? It's making me better. It's not hurting at all.
It certainly lifts your mood, and depending on like what being intentional with your thoughts during that time too.
Yes.
And being self-aware, I know has been very important for me because I had asthma, and one time I had a panic attack, but because I wasn't aware, I thought it was asthma attack. Yeah.
I have asthma as well, and since I've been doing this breathing practice, my lungs have so much more capacity. You need some more water?
I'm good. Thank you.
It has so much more capacity. So that's off subject though, but breathing is good. It's good for all different kind of mental illnesses, what they call mental illnesses, but I just look at it as debilitating parts of what the debilitating impact of what we've been through. So there are specific mental illnesses, and I'm seeing classically what that looks like. But for Black people, we've been through so much trauma that, it's just it's part of what, the impact of it. It's part of it.
Being Black and on this soil is traumatic. And, I've said that before to people, and they'll say, oh, no, I don't agree with that. I don't believe that I've experienced any trauma. I don't believe that all Black people experience trauma. I know for myself, we don't, and I just, and then in the next breath, they'll say something to the effect of, Black people with natural hair look like something negative, something bad. Yeah. But they'll say, me personally, I've never experienced trauma, but they don't necessarily identify Blackness with beautiful and love,
Yeah. But there's other ways that they've experienced trauma in some way. Oppression and poverty can be very traumatic. And some Black people, they have a disconnect or dissonance from oppression and poverty. But if you sit down and you listen to their story, you can find it somewhere. I was talking to a group of young people. There are a group of young people who are trying to have these conversations around depression. And I said that, I know that chemical depression really does, it really is real. But I said, when we're talking about Black people, there's always a connection to trauma, because chemical depression is nothing ever happened and you just feel depressed sometimes, right? And I'd say that I've never even seen just a Black person who just nothing has ever happened and they feel depressed sometimes. And this young man said, me, you know, that's how I am. I had a sugar addiction, and you know, it wasn't anything. I wasn't sad. Nothing ever happened. And so when I stopped eating sugar, I started feeling better. And so that was his idea of chemical addiction. I said, well, why were you eating trash foods? Why were you eating so much sugar? Did you have any other things available to you and that's what you chose? Like, we have to look at those things. You know, our people live in food deserts. Why? You know, why we don't have access to fresh food? And even, you know, the way his mom chose to feed him had everything to do with what her mom chose to feed her and what was available to us. So it's like there's always a connection there. And I'm not reaching either. I'm not reaching.
I don't believe you are. You're right.
You know, and I mean, you can even go as far as to say everybody in America has, you know, some type of trauma. And this is not saying, you know, for people who say I don't have trauma and that's never happened. I'm not the one to say, yes, you did. You know, I'm like, okay, you want to stay there? That's fine. Eventually, it'll all come down somewhere, like it did for me, like it did for a lot of survivors. It's going to show up. It's going to show up somewhere. You don't have to push anybody to make it show up. I'm not for pushing people to make them do anything. I'm for people who are ready. If you're ready to get the help and you don't want to cut yourself anymore, you don't want to do harmful things to yourself anymore, and you want to figure out what's wrong, and you want to figure out what's wrong, which usually ends up to being an answer to what happened, and then processing through that so that you can feel victorious again and feel good again, then I'm your girl for that. I'm your woman for that, you know? But anybody who's like, nah, I ain't never had no trauma, I'd be like, okay, it's wonderful. Do I believe it? You know, and then when we talk about generational historical trauma, intergenerational historical trauma, that stuff really impacts us. Absolutely. Yeah. And now, you know, there's a lot of truth coming out about, you know,
DNA trauma,
but also slavery and indigenous people. You know, we are taught that, you know, there were no Black people here before Columbus came, right? But there were no Black people, but there were no indigenous copper-colored people already here. And so we get confused and say, you know, we were just so weak in Africa that they came to get us, you know, and nobody fought. I mean, there's a lot of things that we learn about ourselves that are not true. You know, in the education system and in historical context, there are a lot of lies. And when we go to uncover that, that's traumatic enough. What you have, you know, we living a lie.
Learning all them lies is traumatic.
Yeah.
So for y'all who are just joining, let me just update you real quick. We are now talking about ways that you can release some of the pain or some of the trauma that you may have experienced, and ways that you can facilitate your self-healing. But let me just say, what are some self-destructive things, like not just cutting yourself, for people who don't cut themselves? There are maybe other self-destructive things.
Ooh, yeah. I think having sex without protection. And people don't like to hear that. Like having casual sex without taking care of your sexual health and making sure that you're protected. I think overdoing anything, overdoing eating, you know, overdoing drinking alcohol, overdoing doing any type of drugs, overdoing sex, gambling, shopping, you know, anything that's out of balance, though, you know, that's important. We don't really look at those things as those things are emotional issues there. It's kind of like, oh, I like to eat too much, you know, and listen, people who are overweight are one thing, you know, you have to see, you have to dig into why. The question is always why. Why are you drinking so much? Why are you eating emotionally? Why
do you constantly choose to be in the presence of people who don't value you or don't treat you the way you should be treated?
Right. I mean, I think there are 3 ways to see your functioning in things also. So those are some behaviors that people can do. But identify, how are you doing at home? Are you having good relationships at home? Like, some people live by themselves, and of course that's good. But say if you live with your family, or say if you live with your significant other and children. Are relationships good at home? Identify that. Identify, are your relationships good at work? Are you functioning? Are you able to keep a job? Are you able to show up to your job and not be, probation or whatever the case may be? Looking at your life. Are you moving from job to job to job? Are you getting fired on a regular basis? That's functioning at home, functioning at work, and then functioning in the community. There are some people who cannot go into the community without getting into mess or fights or, oh, I don't like you, those type of things. That's a big red flag. If you can't go somewhere without a problem, that's a huge red flag. If you can't go somewhere because people, are after you, you know what I'm saying? That's a big problem. And these are the things that I hear that people don't recognize as a functioning issue. And so, you can be impacted in that way too. Just look at your own behavior. You're the person that knows your own behavior better than anyone else. You are with yourself 24/7. And so if you're not sleeping, something may be wrong. We should sleep. We should sleep for health. People should sleep. And now if you sleep 4 to 6 hours or 6 to 8 hours or even 3 to 4 hours and you're feeling rested when you wake up and you're feeling like you're functioning well, that's, but some people really aren't sleeping. Or sleeping way too much, 12 to 16 hours, and they get up and eat something and go straight back to sleep. Something, these are indicators. Eating too much or not enough. When I see children and I ask their moms how was their diet? Oh, she barely eats. And I'm like, there's something wrong. What's going on? Oh, she's picky. Okay, if she's picky, what does she like to eat? She'll eat peanut butter jelly every day. Feed her peanut butter jelly every day until we figure out what other things she likes. Introduce some other things. That's one thing. But for a child that has peanut butter and jelly in the refrigerator and everything the child likes to eat but does not eat, that's an indicator. There's something that's off about that, and we need to figure out what's wrong or what happened. Yeah. Okay. There's many ways to identify. And the thing about it is, let me say this loud and proud, that if you are a parent of a child between the ages of 0 and 14, maybe 16, you can get your child help. Beyond 16, you can't force them to come. You can't. And then some adult parents of adult children want to force children to their adult children to go to counseling. It doesn't work like that. You just keep encouraging them to say, I think you should talk to somebody. Maybe we can find somebody good for you. Or because you can't force them, it won't work. Forcing someone into therapy will not work.
So once again, some of the things that have been stated tonight that people can do to help facilitate their healing is to keep a journal, to seek counseling and therapy, and learning a breathing technique or meditation technique. Or
yes.
What about people who say, like, I can't consistently write in a journal?
There are other ways to journal. You can video journal. You can talk into your phone. You can type into your phone. I quote unquote journal by freestyling sometimes, and that's my thing. I turn on if I'm in a car by myself, that's why I don't mind driving places, because I turn on my instrumentals and I go and I just let it out via rhyming. And it's what I found that works for me. Is sometimes I'll be in a car crying down, just tears just flowing down my face, but I wipe my tears and be like, I go. Because it helped me release. So I think we should try to make ourselves right. It's not hard, I think people, they say I'm not a writer, but even if you just wrote down words, even if they weren't connected, they're for you. Even if you wrote down lists of things that you like to achieve, or feelings or thoughts that you're having when you're having them, it doesn't have to be grammatically correct. You don't have to write paragraphs on paragraphs on paragraphs. You could draw, you can draw in a journal. I think also too, self-expressing tendencies, like I'm saying self-expressive tendencies, but like ways to express yourself. When I go to dance, I feel good. I feel real good. Like when I dance, when I draw, when I paint, when I
Do poetry,
poetry, music, sing, rap, any type of art. Art is very healing. Very, very healing.
Yes.
When you intentionally say that I'm going to express my sadness, express my anxiety, express my anger. Anger is a huge impact of sexual violation. Anger. You wonder, why you're so angry? Why am I so angry? You have a reason to be angry. It's just expressing that anger in the right ways. And so to intentionally release while you're doing something is like, if you go and say, I love to dance, I'm gonna go dance, but you forget to say, I'm releasing anxiety when I dance.
Gotta be intentional.
You got to be intentional about doing that. It makes a huge amount of difference. When you're breathing, also be intentional about letting anger and anxiety and stuff go.
Right. So I pinned the website address to the top. You do have a project that's getting ready to come out, right?
Yes.
Can we talk about this for a minute?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking, because over my lifetime, poetry saved me. Journaling, and a lot of it was through poetry. And so I consider myself a poet. And from poetry, I gravitated also to spoken word. And then from spoken word, I gravitated to hip hop. And what I decided is that I'm on a mission. I am personally on a mission to bring awareness of sexual assault, sexual trauma, bring awareness of trauma to our people, and also teach on how to heal that, teach on how to dig deep and process through emotions, teach on how to just shine. If you've been through something, you can heal. And you can learn how to shine. You can learn how to shine again and be your beautiful self again. And so I teach that through my art. And so Late Bloomer is coming out soon. And it's not my first album. This is my second album and my third project. And all of it has been dedicated to healing. All of it. And so not only do I use my personal gifts and talents to heal myself, but I also am on a mission to heal others through it.
Right. And we got to be very, very intentional about what we are allowing into ourselves.
Yes.
And I personally have been looking for music that I can play in my classroom for my kids. And now it's been pretty much NDRE or instrumentals or a song here and there that somebody else writes.
Oh, girl, we got to get you on
I want to pre-order. Can I pre-order?
Yeah, but we have Who You Are, which is a beautiful song for girls. And boys need to listen to it too. Yeah. They need to know that girls need to face some things about themselves, and then they'll be better. And then boys will be, they want you to face some things about them too. Mm-hmm. But no, on the website, we got some music for you.
Okay.
Yeah, Hot Thing. Oh, they love Hot Thing. They love Hot Thing so much. We got Extraordinary. What age group do you teach?
12.
Oh, yeah, we got music for you.
Yeah. I would love if you can maybe one day make an appearance.
Oh, I would love to. That's what I do. Yeah,
oh, okay.
I come through. Yeah, I definitely come through. I like to bring all the words for them to make a copy of all the words and let them follow along, because all the words have power.
Teaching.
I don't say anything just to fill in spaces. Every word is intentional. Every word is for them to understand their own power. Okay. So yes.
And we can find this on truelovemovement.com.
Yes, at the Listen Up tab. It says Listen Up. And
all
so right. Not all the music, but the mixtape is definitely on there. And then I have an album. Some of the things are on SoundCloud. I'll share the SoundCloud link too.
Okay, and then 2 books, right?
2 books.
Those are available on the website as well?
Yes, they are. Runaway Girl and Keep It High. Runaway Girl tells the story of my transformation from being a victim to survivor to a healer. And that's a real good book. Real good. Yeah. And then Keep It High tells the rest of the story up until now, about my experiences in healing, but also the connection that I had with survivors, the stories. It tells a lot of stories about dealing with girls with self-esteem issues and, with mamas, about wound healing. It's a good book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna try to get that tonight before I leave. If you have any available.
Yes, I do. I always do.
Well, I want to tell everyone thank you for joining us. Please go ahead and contact Ayanna Molina and True Love Movement at truelovemovement.com. She also has a Facebook page. She has you have Instagram.
Yep, True Love Movement on Instagram.
Okay. And let me just say once again, I'm happy that you agreed to do this. I love her. She is so amazing. So
I love you too, and thank you for the opportunity, though. Oh, thank you so much. You know I got you. Anytime you tell me, I'm there. I'm there.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping by, and talk to you later.